Welcome back to another episode of Miracle Mile. Today, I don't have a lot of announcements. In fact, I only have one quick announcement that I want to make, which is the fact that the Dead Mall assets that you see in the background, the Macy's, the Sears, the CJ Nickel, the Dillards, all of those are finally in the workshop. These were kindly made by King Leno. And if you go to the description of this video, you're going to find the link to his Steam Workshop profile where you can get these assets. And obviously they're alive versions too, and plus, you know, a whole lot of other assets that are really, really well made. So yeah, that's all I have to say in terms of announcements. I do plan on talking about everything that's happening on the screen from now on. Now, before I see what this text message that I just got is. Oh, there we go. It's actually not important. All right. So I'm gonna keep this very uncut, very rough, because I actually don't have a lot of time. I am working on some special kind of projects. You'll find out probably in a couple months what that is, but I'm already working on that, and it's something that I have never done before. And that's all I'm gonna say. So it's gonna be a surprise when the time comes. It will definitely be a surprise when the time comes. But one thing that happened in the creation of this episode, and if you're following me on Twitter, you probably already know this because I tweeted a little bit about it. I throw in a little rant about it. And by the way, you should totally follow me on Twitter because that's where I'm the most active. I tweet basically every day, and it's probably the fastest way to get a hold of me if that's what you want. Twitter.com/Toaster. All right, shameless plug there. What was I saying? Oh yes. So what happened as I was recording this episode is that I lost everything. I lost 2/3 of the progress that I made as I was creating this video, and what the specific reason, and I'm not 100% sure that was the issue, but I was using a Prop It Up to remove the not the parking spaces, the vents, the AC equipment that's sit on the roof of this building right here, and the game totally crashed to desktop, and that hasn't happened in a while. And because it doesn't happen often, I have autosave turned off. So I've spent, I don't know, like 2-3 hours worth of work and details into this thing that were completely lost. I decided to keep the video of that though, because I pretty much recreated everything. I did, tweak a few things here and there, but for the most part, everything is pretty much as I originally made it. Though you're probably going to notice a few differences when you see the cinematics at the end of the video. Some really eye candy cinematics, if I do say so myself. But for the most part, like I was saying, I'm going to be adding pretty much details throughout. I am going to complete all of the parking spaces around the mall, which doesn't mean that these parking spaces are like final. I may like remove some to create something in the parking lot maybe later on. I have a few ideas. I'm not settled on anything yet, but that's something that I'm definitely thinking about. So, I've gotten a question by someone asking me whether or not I want to add cars to these parking lots because the place looks deserted. I mean, it's a dead mall, so it's going to look deserted, but there's a few things that I want to try that would add more detail and sort of a texture to these empty areas. Yeah, we'll see how that comes out. I'm pretty confident I'm going to be able to pull out some cool things, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself. One thing I'm doing here is, or a big part of this episode was focusing on just extending these marble-looking pedestrian roads, which they pretty much extend from all the major entrances into the parking areas. And primarily next to the handicap spots here, so that when this mall was in full operation, people with disabilities were able to park and easily access the mall for all of their shopping needs, if they so desired. But I just figured, it's a little bit of a detail that makes things more realistic, and I extended this pedestrian road across the road that separates the parking lots and the main area. Of course, like I always say, none of this is final. I'm still like adding things. In fact, you're going to see me delete things all the time here and replace them with others. So those little pedestrian roads that connect the parking lots we'll see a lot of detail happen to them. Just give it a bit more time. Now another thing that I'm doing here is just adding a little bit of landscaping to the entrance. I noticed I was using lately, and this is another question that I've gotten that I think it's worth mentioning in a video. What mall am I using for inspiration? I'm obviously not copying any particular mall, but lately I've been using the Squiggly Mall in Frackville, Pennsylvania, and the Indian Springs Mall in Kansas City, which are of course both closed. In fact, Squiggly Mall, you can actually see a video of it on Dan Bell's channel, which is the channel I mentioned was one of the main inspirations for this series on episode 1. But you know, there's some street view of those malls. In fact, the Indian Springs Mall is actually has closer street view and higher definition street view than the Schuylkill Mall. The Schuylkill Mall has a McDonald's on the side with some street view coverage, which is why I ended up adding that McDonald's on the other end of the mall. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, and I keep going on tangents, and I do apologize for that, but the entrance that you saw me landscape a bit just a second ago, the whole point of that is I noticed that even though these malls are like totally dead, they try to keep the landscaping to not go crazy. You'll see kind of like grass tufts kind of growing from between the cracks, and I'm going to do a little bit of that in just a few seconds too. But for the most part, the areas that are visible and like from the main road, for the most part, and I keep saying for the most part, those are kind of well kept. So that's sort of the goal that I was aiming for. I am thinking of having a few shops still be active in the mall. Not everything is going to be, dead, but that's sort of the goal for now. Now, another big thing that I'm doing here, and the reason why I wanted to remove the AC equipments, now you can see they're gone, is because I wanted to mainly cover all these super bright white roofs with these dock assets by Ronix, which one of their main features, or one of my favorite features, is that they allow decals to be plopped on top. So since we're going to be looking at the rooftops of these buildings a lot, I figured, hey, let's spend some time and add a few details here and there. So I'm readjusting all these like tiles, for the lack of a better word, and just covering some of the roofs, not everything, so that you have a bit of a contrast between the different, the rooftops, I guess. Like, I keep saying the word, but I can't think of any synonyms for that. And, I'm trying to embellish things with these airport assets. Imagine that underneath that big glass roof, there's a hallway with, natural light coming in and just making the shops inside less dreadful, I guess, is what I'm trying to achieve here. But, another thing that I'm going to be doing in just a second is adding the curb planters on the different corners. Oh, before I get into that, I wanted to point this out. So I replaced one of the malls with an AMC, which fits really well. If in my opinion, I think they kind of belong together. I'm not a huge fan of AMC theaters. If I can avoid, I will try to go to another one, but I don't know. They kind of have like a dead mall vibe to them that it was irresistible when I saw that asset. In fact, it was an asset that was already in my collection, so I think I thought of this before when I was building Ocampo. But in any case, one detail that you saw me do quite a bit throughout this episode is adding fences to the main entrance, so that the idea behind this is to prevent urban explorers from coming into the mall and taking photos, because they really usually malls are not a fan of that. I am a fan of that, but mall owners not necessarily so much, and also people trying to do damage just because. So adding those fences sort of enhances the dead mall look in general. And over here, another thing that I'm doing is, and this is really not an issue of like saving prop count, but I'm trying to, this larger larger patches of grass, I'm using these concrete walls to sort of replicate the curve planters that Kinleno has made. So, you know, that way I don't have to use that many assets. And I also can keep the grass sprites that add just an extra bit of detail around them. At the same time, I'm also adding a few more cracks here to the pavement. This is, by the way, a treatment that I'm going to be doing pretty much across the entire parking lot area. For now, I only had time to just do it in this area, but I'm gonna try to add that detail, that level of detail in other places as well, because you know it makes sense. The pavement is not very much maintained, like at all, and also there's not that much traffic. So as water pours in and just rains, things get a bit more damage. And even that little fountain that I was detailing a second ago, I wanted to give it that look of, you know, hey, this has been let grown because there's not enough money to actually maintain it. And since this is kind of in the bag and no one really sees it, well, I mean, why bother, right? One more thing that I'm doing here before, and we're reaching the end of the episode, by the way, but one more thing that I'm doing there is using those dock tiles to sort of cover some of the glass windows that look a bit too clipped between the buildings. I mean, there's like, I'm not saying 20 buildings, but there's like a good 6, maybe 8 buildings that are all clipped with one another in the middle of the mall. So, you know, trying to hide the imperfections with the docks and just the airport terminals is something that's really easy. Okay, but that does it for this episode. If you enjoyed, please consider giving this video a like. That's very much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel and haven't already, also consider subscribing. That way you're notified next time I post a video. But that's all for now. I'd like to thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one.